My name is Nell Prescott. I'm 38 years old. On Easter Sunday, my mother slid a folded piece of paper across the dinner table and said it loud enough that 14 relatives heard every word. 12,000. Delia's rent. Beau's truck. You don't have children, so your money doesn't mean anything. Quit being selfish and pay it. The room went so quiet I could hear the ice settling in the tea pitcher. Every face at that table waited for me to cry or to fight. I did neither. I paid all $12,000 while the coffee was still hot. Then I tore one page out of a notebook, wrote 5 short sentences on it, and asked 4 people to sign their names. My mother smirked the whole time her pen was moving. My brother signed it without reading a single word. My father signed third and never lifted his eyes. My sister read it twice. Then the color went out of her face, and she leaned toward our mother and whispered 4 words. Mom, she set us up. She was wrong. I didn't set anybody up. I just stopped letting other people decide what my silence meant. And what those 4 signatures started that night didn't only end a bill. It ended a story my mother had been telling about me for 3 years, and once it was out, she couldn't take a word of it back. Welcome back to the channel, where we sit with the quiet moments that finally break a family's grip, and the women who put it down and walk out. If any part of that already feels familiar to you, do me a favor. Hit subscribe and leave a comment, because what happened in the 7 weeks after that Easter table taught me something I wish somebody had told me when I was 20. The person who keeps the ledger is never the one who gets to write the ending, unless she takes the pen. I close real estate for a living. 12 years at Sequitchie Title and Escrow, on Broad Street in Chattanooga, 2nd floor, above a shop that sells cast iron and dulcimers to tourists. I sit at a desk with 2 monitors and a stack of folders, and my job is to be the last set of eyes before something becomes permanent. People think a house sale is the handshake. It isn't. The handshake is a story. The signature is a fact. I've watched grown men promise each other the world across my conference table. And I've watched those same men come back 9 months later with lawyers. And the only thing that mattered, the only thing that ever matters, is what somebody put their name on. 12 years of that teaches you one lesson, and it never stops being true. Nothing disappears. It only gets signed for by somebody else. I was good at the job. I was calm when other people weren't. I could look at a file that had gone sideways and tell you the exact afternoon it started going sideways, usually 2 weeks before anybody else noticed. My boss told me once that I had the nerves of a hospice nurse and the memory of an auditor, and he meant it kindly, and I took it kindly. What I could not see for a very long time was my own family from the outside. I lived alone in St. Elmo, in the back half of an old house somebody split into 2 apartments in 1974. The floors leaned toward the kitchen. In January, the radiator knocked 3 times before it decided to work. It was mine, the way a rented thing can be yours, and I liked walking in the door to a room where nobody needed anything from me. In the bedroom closet, on the shelf above my winter boots, there was a red envelope with 1 word written on it in black marker. Rhine. Under the word, in my own handwriting, there was a note that was not gentle. Do not touch. Not for family, especially not for family. Starting in August of 2024, I put $610 in that envelope on the 1st of every month. Rain is a village in the Lofoten Islands, up above the Arctic Circle in Norway. Red fishing cabins on black water. Mountains that come straight up out of the sea like something got angry. In June, the sun doesn't set. It slides along the edge of the horizon all night and turns everything the color of a peach. There was a 9-day photography workshop there in June, 12 strangers, and an instructor who had shot for magazines I'd read in doctors' waiting rooms. I want to be honest with you. I'm not an artist. I take pictures of parking garages at 6 in the morning because the light is good and nobody else thinks so. But I wanted one time in my life to stand somewhere on this earth with a camera and have that be the whole entire reason I was there. The idea came from a postcard. Owen gave it to me our first year together. Red cabins, black mountains, white water. He wrote on the back, "Someday, you and me." We got engaged in the fall of 2022, and it was over by November of 2023. And the honest version, the version I didn't say out loud for a long time, is that he got tired of watching me stand up in the middle of dinner because my mother had called and it couldn't wait. He kept the ring. I kept the postcard. I've made peace with the trade. That trip had already been canceled 3 separate times. In 2021, when my brother let his insurance lapse and then hit a mailbox and a parked minivan in the same 7 days. In 2022, when my sister needed a deposit and a mattress and a truck, and my mother told me on the phone that a sister with a paycheck like yours shouldn't make her sister ask twice. In 2024, when my parents' roof started letting water down the hallway wall. $3,400. My father didn't say one word the whole time my mother explained why it had to be me. The last time, she said something on the phone that I didn't think about again for 2 years. Norway will still be there next year, sweetheart. Your family might not. I booked it anyway. December of 2025. Flight out of Chattanooga on Sunday, June the 7th, connecting through Atlanta and Oslo. The workshop held my seat with a deposit, and the cancellation window closed on April 30th, and the travel insurance had that exact same date printed on it. I wrote June 7 on my kitchen calendar in blue pen. Then I stood there looking at it, and what I felt wasn't excitement. It was fear. Because some part of me already knew that my family was going to test that date. To understand what happened at that table, you have to understand how my family was put together, not loved, put together, organized, like a business with one shareholder. My mother, Lorraine Prescott, is 66 years old. She has never held a paying job in her life, and she never needed one, because she runs something worth more than money. She runs the story. She's the one who knows which cousin is between apartments, whose boy got picked up again, whose scan came back wrong, whose marriage is over but hasn't been announced. She started the family group chat herself the year we all got smartphones, and she named it Prescott Sunday Table. 24 people in it. If a Prescott got engaged or fired or diagnosed, my mother knew first and everybody else knew second, in her words, in her order, in her tone of voice. She said the same sentence at every holiday for 30 years, in a warm voice like a blessing over the food. As long as we all tell the same story, this family is fine. My father, Hollis Prescott, is 69. He welded for a living for 31 years and retired in 2091, and since then he mostly lives in the garage. He buys dead outboard motors off men in parking lots, takes them apart on a piece of cardboard, and sells them running. He is not a cruel man. In 44 years of marriage, I have never once heard him raise his voice to my mother. I have also never once heard him stop her. My sister Delia is 41, divorced in 2018. Her son Jonah is 19 now and works at a tire shop in Ooltewah and comes to holidays with his hair combed wet. Delia decorated cakes at a bakery on Hickson Pike for 8 years. And in October of 2025, the owner retired and closed the doors. And my sister went from 34 hours a week to nothing inside a month. In January, she got on part-time at a grocery store bakery counter for less money and fewer hours. In our family, she has always been described the same way in the tone people use for the weather. Delia's delicate, Delia can't take much. My brother Bio is 34. He works the distribution centers out by the interstate, loading trailers when the season's good and not loading them when it isn't. He lives with his girlfriend Kaylee and her little boy Ridge. In 2023, he bought a used truck off a lot that would finance a heartbeat at an interest rate I still don't like to think about, $655 a month. That was more than his rent had been the year before. For a decade, my mother has described him with one phrase, and she has never updated it. Beau's just about to get on his feet. And me? I was the one who could. That's not a complaint about my childhood. It's a job description. It's a job I accepted without anybody ever handing it to me, and I did it so well and so quietly that eventually nobody remembered a time before it. One Sunday I went back through 6 years of my bank transfers because I wanted the real number. Not the number my mother would say, the real one. $2,100 in 2019 for Delia's apartment deposit after the divorce. $700 in 2020 for Beau's tools. $1,850 in 2021. Insurance, deductible, a mailbox, a minivan. $2,800 in 2022 when my parents' water heater and their heat pump quit in the same January. $1,500 in 2023 when Delia went to the emergency room with chest pain that turned out to be a panic attack, which does not make the bill any smaller. $3,400 in 2024 for the roof. And $4,050 across 2025, in pieces small enough that I never wrote them down anywhere except the app. $16,400. But the total is not what stopped me. What stopped me was the memo line I typed on the water heater transfer 4 years earlier. For Mom and Dad's water heater, don't tell them it came from me. I did that constantly. I sent money and asked my mother not to say where it came from because I thought that was kindness. I thought I was sparing my parents the embarrassment of being helped by their middle child. I thought silence was a form of manners. My mother didn't hear manners. She heard raw material. In the last week of March, my father left me a voicemail, 19 seconds long. I know because I played it 3 times. It's your dad. Easter's at the house. Your mother's, well, she's planning something. Just come with an open mind, all right? Behind his voice, I could hear an outboard motor running in a barrel. My father had never called me before a meal in my life, not once in 38 years. Then on Sunday, March 22nd, 2 weeks before Easter, my Aunt Verna called me after church. Verna is my mother's younger sister. She's 61, widowed since 2019, and she lives up in Cleveland, Tennessee, about 40 minutes north on the interstate. She keeps the books for the quilting circle at her church, which is a detail I did not think mattered at the time. It turned out to be the most important detail in this entire story. I was at my kitchen table with a pay stub in front of me when she called. She asked how work was. She asked if I was eating enough, and then her voice changed into the voice people use at a graveside, and she said the sentence that took the floor out from under me. Honey, everybody hits a rough patch. Your mama's been carrying you for a long time now. That's just what mothers do. Carrying me. I looked down at the pay stub under my hand, $71,000 a year, direct deposit, 12 years, no gaps, no layoffs, no leave. I had bought my parents a water heater. I had bought my sister a bed. I had bought the roof my mother was sitting under while she said that. And here's the thing I found out about myself in that exact second. I didn't correct her. In my job, when a closing goes wrong, the worst thing you can do is start shouting into the phone before you know where the money is. You ask short questions and you let people talk. So I asked 3. How long has Mom been telling you that? Verna said, a while now, honey. Since the engagement at least, maybe before. Who else has she told? And my aunt said, in the gentlest voice you have ever heard, that nobody thought less of me, that Dale and Marcy understood, that the whole family understood, that I shouldn't be embarrassed because pride is the only thing that ever really hurt anybody. The whole family. I'm doing fine, though, you know that, right? And my Aunt Verna said, of course you are, honey. And the exact tone you use was somebody who was not fine at all. That's when I understood what I was standing in. I had been described to these people so many times, in such a soft voice that my own voice couldn't reach past it anymore. I got off the phone, I sat at that table until the pay stub went soft along the edge where my thumb kept moving over it. My Aunt Verna thought she was comforting me. What she had actually just handed me was the first thread. That night I opened Prescott Sunday Table and scrolled back 3 years. And in the main chat, my mother was careful. She is not stupid. She never once put my name in the same message as a $sign. What she posted were prayers. Hard month for our family again. He provides. Please lift up the Prescotts this week. Some of my babies are carrying more than they let on. 24 people, birthdays, obituaries, a photo of Iris's ring when Tate proposed, the church directory picture of my grandmother that my mother reposts every year on the anniversary, hundreds and hundreds of messages. And in every single one, my mother talked about hardship the way a weather report talks about rain. General, blameless, constant. Whatever the other version was, it wasn't in the room I was standing in. I was still scrolling at 1 a.m. when my cousin Iris texted me. Hey, check your DMs. You need to see this. Iris is 27. She's Dale and Marcy's girl, engaged to a good man named Tate, works the front desk at a veterinary clinic in Hickson. She is the only person in my family who has ever apologized to me for something that wasn't her fault. What she sent me were screenshots from a group chat I had never been in. It had a name at the top. Standing in the gap. The women of the family, the aunts, the older cousins, 2 ladies from my mother's Sunday school class, and my mother right in the middle of it. The first screenshot was from a Tuesday in February. Covering Nell again this month. Don't say anything to her. The second one was from the previous September. Keep praying for our Nell, still not herself since the engagement. She won't take advice from me, but she'll take help. Iris had circled 7 words in red before she sent it. Don't ask her about it. She's proud. Underneath the screenshots, she wrote, I thought you knew. Everybody thought you knew. 7 words. That was the whole machine. That was it. 7 words explained why. For 3 solid years, not one person in my family had ever asked me a single question about money. Not a cousin at a cookout, not an aunt in a church parking lot, not my own grandmother's sister at Thanksgiving. They weren't ignoring me. They had been given instructions. I sat on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and my phone in both hands, and I did the thing I always do, which is run the simple version first. I could call Verna back in the morning. I could say, my mother is lying to you. I could say, I have never been broke a day in my adult life. I paid for the roof over her head. And I knew exactly what would happen, because I had watched it happen to my father for 20 years. My mother would not argue with me. That's not how she works. She would be sad about me. She'd call 3 people before lunch and say, in that soft voice, that I'd gotten worse, that the trip overseas was a symptom, that she'd been protecting my dignity for years, and now I was turning on her. And can you blame a mother for being tired? One daughter's word against the woman who tells this family what's true. I would not be a person with a grievance. I would be the 3rd version of a story that already had 2. So I needed something that could not be argued with. Not my word. Theirs. The next week I did quiet work. I printed 6 years of transfers. I printed Iris's screenshots. I laid them out side by side on my kitchen table under the light, and for the first time in a very long time I cried 4 or 5 breaths of it, the ugly kind, standing up. Then I stopped, and I got a pen, and across the top of the printed page I wrote, same years, same family, 2 stories. Only one of them has signatures. That was the moment the shape of it showed up. Not a plan yet, a rule. On Saturday, the 4th of April, the day before Easter, I stopped at a drugstore on Broad and bought a spiral notebook for $3.99. I put it in my purse with a ballpoint pen. I want to be clear because people always assume I planned every second of it. I didn't. I had 3 rules, and that was all I had. 1. Pay the creditor, never the family. 2. Put it in writing. 3. Let every single person see it at the same time. I thought the number the next day might be $2,000, maybe 3. It was so much bigger than that. Easter was at my parents' house in Red Bank, 20 minutes from my place if the lights are kind. There were 15 of us, my parents, Dahlia and Jonah, Bio, Kaylee, and Kaylee's little boy Ridge in a booster seat at the corner, Aunt Verna, my Uncle Dale and my Aunt Marcy, Iris and Tate, and my great-aunt Opal, who is 83 and deaf in her left ear and spent most of the meal asking Tate to say it again. 14 relatives and me. My mother made the ham with the brown sugar glaze she's known for. Deviled eggs on the good plate. A basket of dyed eggs Iris had done with the neighbor kids. My mother was in a bright mood, brighter than usual, refilling glasses before they were empty, touching people's shoulders when she walked behind their chairs. I sat where I have sat since I was 9 years old, the chair nearest the kitchen doorway so I could get up for the rolls. When everybody was seated, my mother lifted her tea like it was champagne. It is so good to have every one of you at one table, she said. One family, one table, one story. My mother only gets that sweet right before she collects. Dessert came out at 2:15. Coconut cake and my father's coffee and the sound of a dozen forks. Then my mother reached into the pocket of her cardigan, took out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across the tablecloth to me. Her handwriting is round and tidy, the kind they taught in 1968. 4 lines. Delia rent, 4 months, 5/2000. Late fees, 700. Bow truck, 4/900. Transmission, 1/2000. And at the bottom, underlined twice, 12,000. We've talked it over as a family, she said. I looked around that table and understood in about 1 second that the word we did not include me. And then she said the thing that changed the whole shape of it, the thing that told me this had started long before dessert. I already gave Curtis my word it'd be settled by Monday. Curtis Boyd is my sister's landlord. He is 73 years old. He owns 6 rentals out around East Ridge, and I had never met the man in my life. In the first week of March, he had taped a notice to Delia's door, the 7-day kind, pay or go. My mother had called him. My mother had told a stranger 5 weeks earlier that her family would take care of it. 5 weeks. She had been promising a man I'd never met that I would pay before she ever said one word to me. I heard myself ask one question, and it came out flat as a table. Why me? And my mother said it in her clear church voice, to 14 relatives and a toddler. 12,000. Delia's rent, Bo's truck. You don't have children, so your money doesn't mean anything. Quit being selfish and pay it. I want to be accurate about what happened next, because it's the part I think about the most, not her sentence, the 4 seconds after it. Delia looked down at her plate. Bo made a sound that was almost a laugh and reached for the cake stand. My Uncle Dale said something about rain moving in Tuesday. My Aunt Verna opened her mouth. I saw it, and I watched her decide against it and close it. My father turned his coffee cup a quarter turn, then another quarter turn, and did not look up. Kaylee's little boy banged a spoon on his tray. He was the only person in that house who didn't go quiet. 15 people at a table, and not one of them said, "That's not fair." Not one of them said, "Lorraine, that's enough." I set my fork down on the edge of my plate. "Okay," I said. That one word did more damage than any speech I could have given. They were braced for tears. They were braced for me to stand up and make a scene so my mother could be the reasonable one. Nobody in that house had ever prepared for a flat, calm yes. My mother blinked. Then her face settled into something satisfied, and she started to say she knew I'd come around. She told everybody I would. "Okay," I said again. "Give me the landlord's payment portal and the loan account number. I'll pay them directly, right now." There was a pause of maybe 2 seconds where nothing in the room understood what had just happened. Delia started fumbling through her phone for Curtis Boyd's information. Beau had to call Kaylee's name across the table and ask her to go dig the finance paperwork out of the glove box of her car. Right now, directly. My mother had no idea yet why those words were a problem for her. It took about 20 minutes. Curtis Boyd's son had set him up with an online portal. I typed in the account number Delia read off her screen. I paid 4 months of rent and every late fee out of my savings by bank transfer, $5,900. Then I turned my phone around and held it up so the whole table could see the confirmation. Green check mark, receipt number, my name on it, N. Prescott. Cumberland Auto Finance has an automated payment line that runs on holidays. I put it on speaker and set the phone in the middle of the dessert plates, and 15 people sat there and listened to a recorded woman ask for the last 4 digits of the account, and my brother said them out loud into the room. And then the recording said it. Your payment of $4,900 has been accepted. Your account status is current. Ricketts and Son Transmission was closed for Easter. They'd been holding my brother's truck since January because nobody had paid for the work, which is the only reason the finance company hadn't already come and taken it months before. I scheduled that transfer for 8 the next morning and passed my phone around the table so everybody could see the screen. $12,000. Gone. In front of 14 witnesses. In under half an hour. My mother was glowing. I'll never forget her face. She thought she had won something enormous. Then I took the notebook out of my purse. I tore 1 page out along the spiral so the edge came away ragged, and I wrote 5 sentences while the whole table watched me do it. And when I was finished, I read them out loud slowly so that nobody could ever say afterward that they hadn't heard. 1. Today is April 5th, 2026. 2. Nell paid $12,000 of this family's debts today, in front of all of us. 3. Delia's rent and late fees are paid in full. 4. Bo's truck loan and repair are paid in full. 5. We 4 confirm that she paid it, and we agree this is the last time. What in the world is that? My mother said. It's not a contract, I said. It's just the truth in writing, for once. I slid it across to her with the pen laid on top. She signed first. She was smiling while she did it, and without looking up, she said, If a piece of paper makes you feel important, sweetheart. Bo signed second. He didn't read one word of it. He drew a little smiley face beside his name because he thought the whole thing was hilarious. My father signed third. He took longer than the other two. He never lifted his eyes off that page, not once, and when he set the pen down, he pushed it away from himself with one finger, like it was hot. Delia signed last. She read it once, then she read it again, and her hand stopped over the last line, the one that said, "This is the last time," and she looked at those words the way you look at a sentence in a language you almost know. Then she signed, 4 names, 14 witnesses. I picked the page up, held it flat against the tablecloth with my fingers at the corners, and took a photograph of it with my phone. Then I opened Prescott Sunday Table, and I sent that picture to 24 people with one line underneath it. So everybody finally has the same story. 3 seconds later, a phone buzzed on the sideboard. Then Marcy's, in her purse, on the back of her chair. Then Tate's face up next to his plate. Then Aunt Opal's loud because hers is turned all the way up. It went around that dining room like something falling down a staircase. Delia got to hers first. She read it, and I watched my sister put 2 things together in real time, because Delia is in the church women's chat. Delia had been reading prayers for me for 3 years. The color went out of her face. And she turned, not to me, to our mother, and she leaned in and whispered, "Mom, she set us up." My sister was wrong about one thing. I didn't set anybody up. I turned on a light. The typing bubbles started before one person at that table had said anything out loud. My Aunt Marcy typed something. I saw it come through and I read it twice, standing there with my coat still hanging on the back of my chair. "Wait, Nell paid? Lorraine, you told us she was the one?" It stopped mid-sentence. 20 seconds later it was gone, and where it had been there was a gray line that said, "Marcy deleted a message." Uncle Dale sent a single question mark. Verna put a heart on the photograph and then said nothing at all, which from Verna is the loudest sound there is. And Tate, who had been in this family for 11 months and did not know a single one of the rules, typed the question everybody else was too well trained to ask. Sorry, I'm confused. I thought Nell was the one having a hard time. My mother stood up so fast her chair skidded on the floor. "Take it down. Right now. This is private family business." I put my coat on. "It was private until you told your version, Mom." She said my name. She said it twice. She said something about the Lord's Day and something about being humiliated in her own house in front of her own aunt. And I remember noticing very clearly standing there with one arm in my sleeve. Not once did she say the paper was wrong. I went out through the kitchen. For 20 years, I had sat in that chair by the doorway so I could get up for the roll. That was the first time in my life. I walked past it in the middle of a meal. The last thing I saw was my father, still sitting, still looking at that torn page on the tablecloth. A deleted message says more than every message that ever gets sent. I drove home in complete silence. My phone did not stop for 2 hours. If you have ever been the one your family calls when a bill comes due, tell me in the comments. Has your family ever run 2 versions of the same story about you? And which one were you living in? Because 6 days later, my aunt sat me down in a pancake house and took away the last version I had left. At 2:11 that morning, a text came in from Verna. "Call me tomorrow before your mother does." In my family, whoever calls first gets believed. My aunt knew that rule better than anybody. Monday morning, there were 6 missed calls before 9 o'clock, all from the same name. I listened to the voicemail standing in the parking garage at work with my keys still in my hand. The first one was rage. "You humiliated this entire family on the Lord's Day. I hope that piece of paper was worth it, Nell." The second one, 2 hours later, was grief. She was crying in it. She said she hadn't slept. She said she didn't know what she had ever done to deserve a daughter who would do that in front of Aunt Opal, who is 83 years old. The third one was a deal. "If you'll take the picture down and tell everybody it was a misunderstanding, we can put it behind us and nobody ever has to talk about it again." 3 different women in one morning, and every one of them wanted the exact same thing. The photograph. By that afternoon, she stopped calling me. She started calling everyone else. And I know what she said, because in a family that size everything comes back around eventually. On Wednesday, a cousin I barely speak to called to check on my mental health. She was kind about it. That's the part that got me. She was so kind. She said Aunt Lorraine had told her I hadn't been myself since the engagement ended, that I'd been struggling for a while now, that the scene at Easter was probably about Owen and not about money at all, and that if I needed somebody to talk to, she was there for me. That was the moment I understood what I was actually up against. My mother was never going to argue about $12,000. She was going to make me into the kind of person who says things like that. She didn't apologize. She wrote me a diagnosis. Bo texted me Tuesday night. Hope you're happy. You turned Easter into a show. Mom cried all night. Delia said nothing. Not Monday, not Tuesday, not the rest of that week. Her name just sat in my phone with white space underneath it, and out of everybody in my family, that silence was the only one I couldn't read. Verna put me off twice. Each time she apologized and said she'd call me right back, and each time she let slip, without meaning to, that my mother had just been on the phone with her for over an hour. My mother was going house to house, patching. Then on Friday, my aunt texted me a place instead of a time. Not on the phone, honey. Sit down with me Saturday. You'll want to be sitting. She sent a pin for a pancake house in Cleveland, Tennessee, 40 minutes north on the interstate. At that point, it was the longest drive of my life. Millie's Pancake House on Keith Street is one of those places with laminated menus and coffee that never gets past lukewarm. My aunt was already in the booth by the window when I got there on Saturday, the 11th of April, and there was a metal tin on the table in front of her. It was an old recipe tin, red, with a rooster painted on the lid and the paint gone at all four corners. My grandmother's, I think. Inside were church envelopes, dozens of them, and a small spiral notebook with a rubber band around it. She didn't ease into it. Honey, she said, I've been paying your bills for 3 years, or that's what I thought I was doing. She opened the notebook. Verna has the handwriting of a woman who has kept somebody else's books for 30 years. Small, slanted, perfectly even. In every single line was a date, an amount, and 2 words. For Nell. $100 a month since the spring of 2023. Extra at Christmas, $250. Extra at Easter, $150. $200 the month her tax refund came. $5,600. Every dollar of it handed to my mother. Then she told me she wasn't the only one. Dale and Marcy had been giving my mother $800, $900 a year, 3 years running by check. Verna had a photocopy of one of them because she'd been standing in the kitchen when Marcy wrote it out, made out to Lorraine Prescott, $2,500, and Iris. My cousin Iris, who is 27 and getting married in October and works the front desk at a veterinary clinic, had taken $1,300 out of her own wedding account in October of 2025 because her mother told her that her cousin Nell was drowning. $9,400. Not $1 of it ever reached me. Not one dime. I sat in that booth with a plate of pancakes going cold in front of me and asked my aunt the only question that mattered. How did nobody ever say anything to me? Not at a funeral, not at a cookout, not once in 3 years. Verna's eyes went red at the edges. Your mama said you were proud. She said, don't ever bring it up. It'll shame you. 7 words. And a whole family looked away from me for 3 years while handing money to the person who was already taking it. I want to be honest about what I felt in that booth because it wasn't rage. Rage is clean. Rage is easy. What I felt was closer to being sick. My mother hadn't just used me. She had used the best thing in these people. Verna lives on a pension and a survivor's benefit and gave $100 a month to a lie. Iris pushed her wedding back a season for one. Everything in me wanted to photograph that notebook and put it in the group chat that night. I didn't. Not yet, Aunt Verna, I said. When this comes out, it comes out once, and it comes out whole. Because her notebook proved where the money left from. It did not prove where it landed, and it did not prove who else in that house had known. That was the question that had started keeping me up at night. $9,400, and the worst one. Was anybody in my own family in on it? My aunt let me photograph every page. Then she put her hand flat on the lid of that tin the way you'd put it on a Bible and lowered her voice. There's something else, honey. Beau was standing in that kitchen at Thanksgiving. He heard all of it. I waited for my brother in the lot out by the distribution center on a Tuesday at shift change, under those tall lights that make everybody look tired and 40. Beau came out with 2 other guys and stopped when he saw my car. He didn't have his truck. It was still sitting at Ricketts, and he'd been riding in with somebody off his crew since January. I told him what Verna told me. Thanksgiving, the kitchen, our mother on the phone with Aunt Marcy doing the voice. Poor Nell, she won't take help. We do what we can. And a check with his name on it lying on the counter next to the sink while she said it. He didn't deny it. That's the part I keep coming back to. He didn't even look surprised that I knew. He shrugged. He actually shrugged. What was I supposed to do? Give it back. It was already spent, Nell. I asked him if he ever once thought about calling me. And he said, Mom handles all that. He said it the way you'd say the mail comes on Saturday. I didn't lose my brother in that parking lot. I found out I'd lost him 5 months earlier, standing in our mother's kitchen, next to a check with his name on it, saying nothing. 3 nights after that, at almost 10 o'clock, somebody knocked on my door. It was Delia. She had her keys in her hand, and she kept them there the entire time, closed up in her fist, like a woman who might need to run. She had gone to Iris herself. She had seen the screenshots with her own eyes. She had pulled her own bank statements and sat on her own floor and done the math. And she had driven across town to say it out loud in her own words. She told me what happened after I left on Easter. She went into our mother's bathroom and threw up. 4 months, she said. 4 months, Nell. I thought Mom and Dad were covering my rent. She told me they were dipping into their savings for me. She told me not to bring it up to you because you'd... And she stopped and made herself finish it, because you'd make it into a thing. Then she said the sentence I have not been able to put down since. I paid my rent with your reputation, and I didn't even know I was doing it. I want to be fair to my sister because she wasn't innocent and she never once pretended she was. She took the help. She never asked where it came from. In April, she covered her own rent with her tax refund and some extra hours, which is the only reason the bill at Easter stopped at March instead of running to 5 months. She could have asked in December. She didn't, because asking would have meant knowing. She asked me what she should do, whether she should pay me back, whether she should call Verna, whether she should go over there and scream at our mother. I didn't want any of that. Tell the truth, I said, once, out loud, in front of them. Delia started to answer me, and both our phones went off at the same time on my kitchen table. Prescott Sunday table. My mother. Family dinner here Saturday, May 9th to clear the air. Everyone come. We are still a family. My mother had chosen her own house, her own table, her own rules. She had forgotten one thing. A witness is something you're allowed to bring with you. The last 3 weeks of April were the hardest part of all of it, and nothing happened in them. That's the thing nobody warns you about. The worst stretch is not the confrontation. It's the quiet afterward, when the pressure stops being loud and starts being patient. My mother called on a Thursday, and her voice had changed again. It was soft this time, almost tender. She said she'd been praying on it. She said she could see how it might have looked from where I was sitting. She said families make mistakes on both sides. And then she made the offer. Take the picture down, tell the family you're sorry, and come home Sunday. That's all it takes to be my daughter again. I was standing at my stove with a pot of soup I was going to eat by myself. I would love to tell you that I laughed at her. I didn't. I stood there holding a wooden spoon and felt that offer land exactly where she aimed it, because she wasn't offering me money and she wasn't offering me an apology. She was offering me a seat, Sunday dinner, the chair by the kitchen doorway, being somebody's daughter in a room with other people in it. That's all it takes. The cheapest price in the world, and the most expensive thing anybody has ever asked me for. Meanwhile, the family got tired. That's what surprised me most, not the anger, the fatigue. 2 or 3 of them moved all the way through outrage in about 10 days and came out the other side just wanting it to be over. One cousin left the group chat because of all the drama. An aunt by marriage sent me a private message that said, "We love you both. Can't we just move on? It's only money." It's only money. She was right. That is exactly why it was never about the money. Iris's future mother-in-law asked her at the bridal shower what was going on with her family, and Iris called me afterward and apologized to me for something that was not hers. And then, on the last day of April, 1 minute after midnight, an email came in. Your cancellation window has closed. Half the workshop fee gone. The travel insurance no longer refundable. Whatever happened next, I was getting on a plane on June 7th, or I was eating that money. I read it twice, sitting on the edge of my bed at midnight, and what I felt was not panic. It was relief. And somewhere in there I finally heard my mother's old sentence for what it actually was. Norway will still be there next year. Your family might not. For 2 years, I had taken that as love. It was a threat wearing love's coat. But I want to be honest with you, because if I only tell you the strong parts, then this whole thing is worthless. Late one night that week, I opened Prescott's Sunday table and I wrote an apology. A real one. 4 paragraphs. I said I was sorry for the way I handled Easter. I said I should have gone to my mother privately. I said family is worth more than being right. And my thumb sat over that send button for what felt like 10 minutes. Then I opened my photos and looked at the picture of my aunt's notebook. $100 a month in small slanted handwriting from a widow on a pension. For Nell, for Nell, for Nell. I deleted that message 1 word at a time. I made myself do it slowly. Then I put the phone face down on the counter, and somebody knocked on my door. It was 10 o'clock at night. It was my father, and he was alone. My father would not sit back on the couch. He sat on the very front edge of it with his cap in both hands, and he turned down a glass of water twice. I'm not here to ask you to forgive her, he said. I'm here so you know what you're standing in front of. And then he said a name I hadn't heard out loud since a funeral in 2014. Hazel, my grandmother, my mother's mother. In February of 1971, my grandparents' house burned, wiring in the wall behind the kitchen. My mother was 9 years old and she was in the back bedroom, and she got out, but not fast enough, and she carried the marks of it on her left arm and shoulder for the rest of her life. All of that part is true. I grew up knowing that part. What my father told me is what happened after. My grandmother Hazel took my mother to 4 different congregations that spring, not her own church. 4. She stood a 9-year-old girl in a sleeveless dress up at the front of a room full of strangers and let them pass a basket for the burned child. And then, when the doctor was paid, she took what was left and bought a console stereo and a coat with a fur collar. My mother got better. My grandmother kept taking her until my mother was 13. 4 years. She was walked into church halls and fellowship rooms and told to hold her arm out where the light hit it. My father said Hazel used to fix her collar in the car before they went in. Stand still, don't smile, let them look. Your mother learned before she was 10 years old, my father said, that a sad story pays better than a true one, and nobody ever untaught her. Then he told me why he'd kept quiet for 44 years, and it was worse than cowardice. Every time he pushed back in the early years, she rewrote him, not to his face, to us. She would tell 3 women in a single week how difficult Hollis had been lately, how hard he was to talk to, how she just prayed about it, and by Sunday he was the man out in the garage who couldn't be reasoned with, and his own children looked at him that way. I looked at him that way. I did. For 30 years I thought my father was a man who didn't have much to say. So he stopped pushing back, and he stayed in the house, and it cost him exactly what you'd expect it to cost. There is a console stereo in my parents' living room, walnut cabinet, cloth speaker grill, a lid that lifts up on the top. It works. My father has replaced the belt and the needle and rewired the whole back of it twice, because that is what he does. He keeps old machines running. I grew up dancing in front of that thing in my socks. Understanding where my mother came from did not make me forgive her. I want to be clear about that. It made the shape of it clearer and heavier, and those are not the same thing as lighter. Every generation gets one chance to set the thing down. She had 56 years to take it. If you're still with me, hit that like button and stay right here, because at that dinner on May the 9th, in front of 9 people, my mother finally said the one sentence she could never take back. Before my father left that night, he took a Bible out of his jacket. He'd carried it in with him, and I hadn't even noticed it. He opened it about 2/3 through, and there was the page for my notebook. the ragged spiral edge, the 5 sentences, the 4 signatures. It had been crushed into a ball and then flattened back out so it had a cross of hard creases through the middle of it where a fist had been. "Your mother threw that in the kitchen trash Sunday night after you left," he said. "I didn't. Somebody's got to keep a thing like that." He'd pressed it flat under the vise on his workbench for a week before he moved it into the Bible. Then he asked me to come on the night. "Not for her," he said, "so there's a witness." I said yes. Not to win. So the story would have a witness. Saturday, May 9th, 9 of us at my mother's table. My parents, Delia, Bio, Verna, Dale, and Marcy, Iris, me. She had made it look like an occasion. Candles in the middle, a roast chicken, cloth napkins folded into triangles, and a stack of index cards next to her plate. I understood before she opened her mouth that my mother had written herself a speech. I did not sit in the chair by the kitchen doorway. I took the seat at the far end, the one nobody ever uses because it's too close to the china cabinet. She started before the chicken was even cut. She talked about how every family has misunderstandings. She talked about how she had prayed and prayed on it. She said she forgave anything that had been said in anger. She said what mattered now was going forward and forgiving one another and never speaking of it again. Never speaking of it again. That's when my Aunt Verna set the red tin on the table. The temperature in that room changed. My mother looked at the rooster painted on the lid, and I watched her recognize her own mother's recipe tin. Verna opened the notebook and read it out loud in her church voice, which is slow and even, and does not shake. She read the dates, she read the amounts. April 2023, 100, May, 100, June, 100, Christmas, 250. She read for almost a full minute, and nobody interrupted her, and by the end of it the numbers had stopped sounding like numbers and started sounding like a hymn. 5,600 from her. 2,500 from Dale and Marcy by check. 1,300 out of Iris's wedding account. Then she closed the notebook and asked one question. $9,400, Lorraine. Into your hand. In her name. Where did it go? My mother did not miss a single beat. You gave it to me, she said. I help my children with it. What's the difference? Iris made a small sound and grabbed her mother's hand under the table. And my mother looked around that room and needed one person, just one, to take her side. And the one who stood up was my sister. Delia got to her feet with both hands flat on the edge of the table because her hands were shaking and she needed somewhere to put them. Every word on that paper is true, she said. I checked it. God help me, I checked every bit of it. She told them she had never seen $1 of anybody's help. Not from Verna, not from Dale, not from Iris. She told them that for 4 months she believed her parents were covering her rent out of their savings, and that she found out on Easter Sunday from a photograph on her phone that it had been her sister the entire time, and that the whole family had been told the exact opposite. Then my Uncle Dale turned to my brother and asked him, straight out, whether he'd known. My brother is not a good liar. He looked at his plate, he said, I mean twice. And then it came out of him in pieces, that he'd been in the kitchen at Thanksgiving, that he'd heard her on the phone with Aunt Marcy, that he hadn't been sure what it meant. Nobody at that table needed him to finish. The silence that came after was the longest I have ever sat inside of. You could hear the refrigerator, you could hear a car go by out on the road. My mother broke it. She stood up so fast the candle flames leaned sideways, and she brought her open hand down flat on that table, and out of her came the truest thing she has ever said to me in 38 years. Everything I ever told them, I told for this family. The story is what kept us fed. The story kept us fed. 55 years later, in her own dining room, in front of her own sister, my mother said her mother's sentence out loud. My father closed his eyes. Verna put her hand on the lid of that tin and left it there. Nobody yelled after that. That's not how it went. It got quiet and practical, which was so much worse for her. Dale said that from now on, if anybody in this family needs help, it goes straight to the person who needs it. Straight there. No middle. He said it the way a man reads a rule off a wall. Verna did not ask for her $5,600 back. She asked for one thing. Pay Iris first. That girl is saving for a wedding. And my mother, with the whole room turned against her, looked down the table at me. She had one card left and she played it. Nell, sweetheart, let's just put all this behind us and start over. And there it was, the door back into the old room. All I had to do was take it. All I had to do was be the one who fixed it, be the reasonable one, be the good girl who lets it go, and by Sunday I'd be forgiven for something I never did. I stood up. From now on, I said, I'm only in stories I can sign. And I left while the chicken was still hot. Delia caught me on the porch, under the yellow bulb, out of breath, and asked me 4 words. When's your flight? I told her the date. My sister nodded once and said, I'm driving you. Here's what the next few weeks actually look like, because I think this is the part people get wrong. Nobody was ruined, nobody moved away, there was no screaming match in a church parking lot. What happened to my mother was much quieter than that. Within 5 days, the women of that family had a new group chat. Prescott Cousins. Verna started it. Marcy was in it. Iris was in it. Delia was in it. My mother was not. She still had her old chat with 24 people in it. She still posted her prayers there, and fewer people answered them. Then the invitations started thinning out. A birthday party she heard about afterward, a cookout at Dale's she wasn't asked to. For a woman whose entire power was being the first to know, that was the whole sentence. She wasn't punished. She lost her audience. My father did something he had not done in 44 years. He acted first. He sold the outboard he'd spent all winter rebuilding. The good one, the 78 Evinrude with the new impeller that he'd been saving for the spring, and he drove the cash over to Iris himself. $1,300 in an envelope at her front door. He told her he was sorry it took so long. He didn't explain. He didn't come inside. There's an empty rectangle on the garage floor now where that motor used to stand. Clean concrete with an oil stain drawn around the outside of it like a chalk outline. The rest of the $9,400 has not been paid back. My mother doesn't have it. She never did. Beau found out fast that the tap was closed. Nobody was slipping him anything anymore. He sent me one last text at 2 a.m. Mom's blood pressure is through the roof. Thanks a lot. Hope Norway was worth it. I blocked his number. I didn't announce it. I didn't tell anybody. It took one thumb and about 2 seconds, and then my brother was somebody I used to hear from. Then, on the 12th of May, my sister paid her own rent. She was 9 days late, and she paid the $200 fee out of her own pocket, out of graduation cake hours at the grocery store bakery counter, and Curtis Boyd sent her a receipt with 1 word on it, the way he does. Received? She posted a picture of it in Prescott Sunday Table. Rent's paid, late and by me. Thanks for teaching me, Nell. That is the only public apology anybody in my family ever made. It never used the word sorry, and it is the only one I would have believed. 2 days after that, a card came in the mail from my mother, lilies on the front. Inside, in gold script, it said, "Families forgive." And underneath that, she had signed her name. That was all, not one line in her own handwriting. I put it in a drawer. I didn't tear it up, and I didn't write back. Some doors you don't slam, you just stop standing in front of them, waiting. I want to be clear about what it cost, because I don't think winning is the right word for any of this. I lost Sunday dinners. I lost my brother, and I don't think that one's coming back. I lost the sound of my mother's voice in my life, and I did not know until it was gone how much of my week had been built around waiting for it. 2 relatives have kept a polite distance from me ever since, the way people do when they'd rather not choose. And my savings account, the real one, the emergency one, the one that was supposed to be for a transmission or a hospital or a bad year, is nearly empty. What I got was this: a sister who stood up at a table with her hands shaking, a father who acted once in 44 years, an aunt who is family to me now in a way she wasn't before, and a flight that nobody on this earth was allowed to postpone. The night before I left, I took the red envelope off the closet shelf and emptied it into my travel wallet. $12,810, 21 months to fill it, 1 family to almost empty it, and they never touched this one. The envelope was flat, and for the first time in 21 months, empty meant finished. Delia pulled up 15 minutes early on Sunday morning, June the 7th. At the curb at the airport, she put something in my hand, a roll of film. 36 exposures. 1 honest frame a day, she said. That's the whole rule. This family's had enough of the other kind. We hugged at the doors about 3 seconds longer than we ever had in our lives. Neither of us cried. It was close. 9 weeks earlier, I had been sitting in that chair by my mother's kitchen doorway, getting up for the roll. Chattanooga to Atlanta, Atlanta to Oslo overnight, Oslo to Bordeaux in the morning, and then a small plane over water so blue it looked like a mistake, and then a road that ran right along the edge of the world with the mountains standing straight up out of it on both sides. Rhine was smaller than the postcard. Everything is. The workshop was 12 strangers and a woman who told me on the second afternoon that I had a good eye for light on hard surfaces, which is exactly what 12 years of photographing parking garages at 6 in the morning will do for a person. Near the end of that week, I walked out past the cabins by myself at 11 o'clock at night, and the sun was still up. It just hung there, low and gold, refusing to go down, laying a stripe of light across the water all the way to my feet. The wind came off that water hard enough to lean against. I took a picture with my phone. Then I opened Prescott's Sunday table, and I posted it with no caption at all. That is the last message I have ever sent in that chat. Verna put a heart on it. Nobody else said anything, and nothing else needed to be said. That night she texted me privately. Your daddy put your page in the family Bible, Ecclesiastes. He said that's the book for people who counted things. Back at the guest house, there was a lamp on the nightstand and my spiral notebook down in the bottom of my bag, the same one that gave up a page in my mother's dining room. The torn edge is still ragged. The notebook still works fine. So does the family, I think, with a page missing. I opened it and I wrote one line. Day 1. Nobody signed for this but me. For 12 years, I kept the ledger for those people. Every dollar, every deposit, every deductible, every roof and water heater and emergency room visit. Recorded by me, spent by somebody else, explained by my mother. That night, above the Arctic Circle, with the sun refusing to set, I closed the ledger and wrote the ending myself. If you know a woman who keeps paying because she's the one who can, send her this and subscribe because in this family and maybe in yours, there's always one more story waiting to finally get told true. Being the one who can pay is not the same thing as being the one who owes. It took me 38 years and one torn page to learn the difference. Don't take that long.